Morning.
Morning.
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Get my stuff pulled up here, so hang tight. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Morning.
Morning.
We have to wait a minute.
What? No.
Current under like organizer time, and then it says location. I copied that link.
Did anybody have problems getting in?
No.
Cool.
No.
Yes. Felicia and I believe Krista are not finding the link.
Well, that's because they don't know how to use their damn calendar.
You have to open it up and click on.
Hey, Doug said you guys don't know how to use your calendar. Oh shoot, did I forget to mute?
I'm in now. One of you post the link. Just check my calendar.
Someone's on the call.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up, you got some of you people have more difficulty than my parents would getting a fucking calendar invite.
Listen, the calendar invite I clicked on and it didn't look.
I muted you because you don't know how to use the calendar.
Oh.
PC load letter.
PC load letter. That's hilarious, Nate. I tried to unmute you, Chris. I'm sorry. I don't know how. I guess it doesn't want me to hear from you anymore. Sorry. I'm asking you to unmute. And now she's like, I'm not going to unmute. The hell with you. All right. Good morning. We're going to do the buyer consult today. Who has done a buyer consult? Meredith, you don't count because God bless you. You've sat through 2 this week. Who's done a buyer consult in the last week? Raise your hands. Wow. Who's done a buyer consult in the last 2 weeks?
Probably me.
Okay, probably.
I'll be doing one today.
Okay, fair enough. That kind of counts. Who's done a buyer consult in the last month?
Are we raising our hands or saying me?
How about both? Okay, now who has met with a client that you hadn't done a buyer consult for in the last 2 weeks? Nobody?
Met with a client that you haven't done one with?
Yeah.
I mean, I will be, but I'm going to do it with them when I.
No, I mean, who have you had an appointment with that you hadn't done a buyer consult for?
Oh yeah.
In the last 2 weeks.
And well, do you mean like I'll meet a client for the first time and we just do it right there?
Right.
Where we're at in a house.
If you're doing it right there, that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. But who's met with folks who haven't gone through some variation of the buyer consult in the last 2 weeks?
I did a video showing for somebody and I hadn't done it yet. The guy's like impossible to get a hold of. So.
Okay, fair enough. Who's not doing buyer?
Sometimes I'll just.
So to this, I'll say I have one where I started doing it, and basically I was getting the body language of, yeah, you know, we've done this before. So I just kind of like, okay, well, I'm just gonna close this up right now when they want to talk business and start talking numbers.
That's fair. At least you breached the subject, right?
Sometimes if I'm not in front of them, I'll send over.
Question. What was the question?
Hold on a second, Brandon. What, Janine?
I was going to say, sometimes if I'm not right there with them or they're out of town or whatever, and I can't do it face to face, I'll at least have a discussion on the phone and send over the consult as a PDF so that they at least have it with them, so they know what I'm talking about when the time comes.
I like that. That's called the Nate, I think. That's very good. Brandon, the question was, who's met with a new client in the last week, 2 weeks, month, and you haven't done a buyer consult with them?
Oh, yeah. I pretty much insist on doing the consult the first time we meet.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because if they don't know from day one what's going on, it goes off the rails pretty quickly. It can.
That's fair. Expound upon that. You can't see me, I don't think, but I'm doing the stretch thing.
Yeah, I'm driving to Nashville for a showing, so I'm not on video. I'm just on the call. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Well, based on my experience, unless I lay everything out early on, and then I can point back to that conversation as we go through inspections, as we go through due diligence, as we go through appraisal, where I can say, hey, remember the first time we met and we discussed this and I told you that this could happen? Well, this is happening now. If I don't have that reference point to go back to and remind them of, and if I don't have the ability to educate them on the front end, one, I don't really feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to make sure they're completely prepared. And two, I miss that opportunity to say, yeah, I told you this could happen. And I don't ever want that to happen.
Right. And it's not a told you show. Bless you, Meredith. It's a, hey, I set that expectation. Do you remember when I set that expectation?
Sure.
And it's kind of like this, and this is an amazing reference, and none of you will appreciate it like I'm appreciating it right now. But you know, in Spaceballs, where they're watching the movie, and he's like, "Where are we now? We're now. We're at that point in the movie where they're in the movie. That's where we are in the buyer consult. When is then? Then is now. You know, the point is, you're referencing something you've already talked to them about. And everything we do in this business really comes back to expectations, setting them, referring back to them, meeting them, exceeding them, making sure people understand where we are in the process. And you can't do that if you don't set the expectations on the front end. So my whole point is to preface this by saying you're doing yourself and your client a disservice if you don't start your relationship with them by having some form of a buyer consult. Does it have to be the full sit down in the office, flip through your binder? No, it doesn't. Is it really helpful when you do that? Absolutely. Can you do it the first time you show a house at the kitchen table? Yeah, absolutely. You can do that too. Can you do it over the phone or through a Zoom call after you send them the PDF of the buyer consult? Yeah, absolutely. The important thing is that you're taking the time to set the expectation. Otherwise, all you're doing is opening doors, and any monkey can open a door. What are you doing to be different and provide more value?
Well, one point on that I wanted to add was a lot of agents, based on what I've been told by clients that I've worked with, don't do anything close to this. So based on my experience, several times when you have someone who's not committed to you and they've been honest with you or haven't been honest with you about talking to other agents, when you do this, it sets you apart. They think, this guy really knows his shit. No one else has told me this. Now I understand what due diligence is. So I think it actually gives us a leg up to winning and securing clients. And that's another reason I do it too.
I think that's a great point. Anybody else want to comment on that before we really get rolling?
I would agree with what Brandon was saying on that it helps to set you apart. I mean, even if you can't I prefer to try to do it like in person to go over things with them, because then you can kind of gauge also how they're reacting to what you're telling them. I mean, you can do it over the phone and talk to them and all that, but it's really when you're able to see their body language, when it's like, hey, this is what due diligence is, this is what earnest is, you can kind of get an idea of, are these people serious, or are they about to flake out on me and disappear after this showing because they're really not ready?
Right. They're completely checked out. They're not paying attention. They're not picking up what I'm putting down. It's a good test close.
It's a good foundation for your relationship. And I also found that, especially for first-time home buyers, they're scared to death. And it's a good way to ease some of their nerves. Sit down, explain things to them. They feel better about it. They don't feel stupid asking questions after that, because a lot of first-time home buyers, they're scared to ask questions. And in the consult, I explain everything to them, and I tell them, like, there's going to be questions. You're not going to remember all of this. We're just touching bases, just so whenever you hear this, you'll remember, oh, I remember her saying this before in the consult. Let me ask her this question. Right. So it just kind of sets them up being comfortable.
Right. And that's what we do, right? Information to feel comfortable and confident. Look at you working the mission into your name. Alicia, you get a gold star for the day, virtual.
I think that's a great point. And there are really two types of buyers I think it's especially important with. Like you said, first-time home buyers, they really don't know anything and they're really apprehensive and nervous. And again, in my experience, anyone who uses State Employees Credit Union has to have the buyer consult, especially if they're doing the first time zero down, because so many of these people think, well, I'm doing zero down. That means I don't have to pay anything at all, period, the whole time, right? They don't think or know about due diligence and earnest money, and for the large extent, closing costs. They're not sure how inspection costs fit into all this stuff. So it's really important for anyone doing a zero down loan. A lot of them think that means they're going to buy a house without cutting a check at all, and we all know that's not the case.
And to that point, I always start, Brandon, and say, you're buying a house. You're going to expect that there's going to be cost along the way. Here's an idea of what those are going to be. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the consult, right? And we're going to go through it and get to that. And that's why it's in there. So as a reminder to make sure you go through it. Both of my consults this week were with first-time home buyers. They had no clue. And so, Charles, I want you to make your point. Just give me a second. I think I was just trying to count. I think Amanda and I bought 5 homes before I got into real estate. I can guarantee nobody sat me down and went through anything like this before we bought the house. Now, how many of you have bought a house or more than one house? And how many people actually sat you down? How many of your agents actually sat you down and went through something before or at the same time as showing you the first house that you looked at? Well, Charles, you had a great agent. Thank you.
My last agent didn't. I'm just putting that out there.
Your last agent was yourself.
Prior to that, he just said, write a check for this amount.
No. You said your last agent. Don't make me mute you like I muted Krista.
My last agent didn't tell me anything either.
Well, it doesn't count if it's friends or family. Quit working against my point, you assholes.
Seriously, quit bitching. You got a house. Shut
You got
up.
the house you wanted.
Oh my God, feel the love. Jesus.
Everybody is extra spiky this morning. Charles, go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, so especially when it comes to like the due diligence money and the additional closing costs. I mean, I have a client right now that they had lost a prior deal with somebody. We're under contract and everything, but they are not, it's going to be close, right? And I had the conversation with them the day we looked at the house that these are the expected closing costs. And they're like, but our lender didn't tell us this. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what to tell you, but this is what you're going to have to be coming up with. And I think because we had that conversation, this deal will be salvaged because they knew 30 days ago, hey, I need to be saving every single penny that I have. You know, you talk to these people and a lot of folks, they see the 0% down, 0% down or zero money down for a home, right? Low down payment, first time home buyer program, which those exist. And something I try to do with folks that I've been doing more lately that's been helpful is I went through the SESI program, which is like a North Carolina thing for helping home buyers for affordable programs. Doug, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But most people have no idea how those programs work. None of our current lenders deal with them. So having that conversation with somebody and being able to say, hey, look, these programs exist, but realize that there's a lot of restrictions on them that's going to prevent you from going out and buying that brand new $300,000 house because it's not eligible. So thinking you're going to come in there and pay nothing for a home.
It's unrealistic.
Exactly. And being able to set that in the beginning and say, look, if you want to go with these programs, they exist. So it just helps kind of like what everybody's been echoing of setting you apart and showing that you are an expert in your field.
And that's a good point, showing that you're an expert. Setting expectations is part of it. The other part is also being in control. How often do we talk about who do you want to guide the ship? Do you want the lender to guide the ship? You think the lender's in control? How many people are they working with? You think you're working with a lot of people. How many people are the lenders talking to? How many people are the attorneys talking to? You think they're in control of what's going on? You think your buyer's in control? They have a clue what's going on? Even Mr. Yeah, I bought 5 homes. Well, yeah, Karen, Mr. Karen, it's been 30 years. Congratulations. You averaged a home every 6 years. Huge accomplishment.
I believe it's Carl.
Carl, that works.
Oh my God.
Brandon.
Nice to see you. I'm glad you put the clothes on so you could turn your camera on. Thanks a lot.
I was eating. Felicia let me have some chicken she made last night, so I was eating that. I just didn't want you guys to have to witness that.
Well, that's nice. I appreciate it. Are you guys
in terms? Hold on. In terms of providing value, which is always what we're trying to do, right? To show these people that we're professionals and we're good. When someone hits me with a comment like that, back to Charles's point of, well, they didn't say anything about closing costs. Some buyers don't have any. They don't have 2 pennies to rub together. They don't have an option. They have to go with one of these programs or state employees or whatever. But I'd pounce on that immediately. Well, if they didn't tell you this, what else are they not telling you? You know, this is probably $3 or $4, $5, $6, maybe $7,000 you need to be aware of. I really think it would benefit you to talk to one of my lenders. I can have somebody on the phone with you within the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a whole lot of value.
That is a disaster waiting to happen.
So,
and that's about providing value. You can't control that. So try to get them into an arena where at least we can get them on even footing with someone that we have a relationship with. Not always going to be able to do that. Obviously, I've got people just like that now, but we try.
So I try to always, as far as you're saying that, Brandon, the closing cost, I'll always reach out to the lender before I go under contract with an address and say, okay, is this doable? What can they expect in closing cost? So you can at least, obviously nothing is to the penny from the beginning, but they can at least have a ballpark of what to expect and see if they're comfortable with that. Hey, what's the mortgage payment going to look like on this property? Hey, what can they expect for closing costs on this property? And then give that back to them before I make them sign so that they are fully aware of what they're getting into.
And now you're starting to touch on things that we actually talk about in the consult. And there's things in there to reference. So that's all really good points. Who is really excited about doing the buyer consult? Juliana. I love the enthusiasm. Thank God somebody's alive out there. That's fantastic. All right. So we're going to do this, not like you think we're going to do it. I'm not going to do this. We're going to take a page at a time, and I'm going to pick you at random to do the pages. Who's excited about it? I can tell Tiffany is. Tiffany's going to do our mission page. You're batting lead off, Tiffany. Knock it out of the park. You got to get on base so we can get some runs on the board early.
Oh my. So this page, I mean, I kind of talk about this really quickly to be 100% honest with you, because people usually want to get into the meat and potatoes of the thing. But what I always tell people is, I tell them about, me a little bit, and then I'll say, and have you ever heard of
So let me preface this. I'm sorry. Before this is the about you and about the team page. I don't have that open for our meeting today. That's where all the packet starts, with the about the team and then your bio page. So don't forget that. And that's a good point. Thanks for making that, Tiffany. You're going to do that first before you get into this.
Yeah, I was going to say it's throwing me off, this order, but
all right.
So I do that, and then I get into this, and I'll say, I don't know if you've heard about our company or not, and I'll tell them that we are based out of Holly Ridge. We also have an office at the coast. And then I always tell people that our goal is to just provide them with the best service. We're not a company out here trying to grow and be the biggest company. What our goal really is to just provide them with the best guidance and knowledge that we can do, that we can provide, just so that they can make a confident decision with a real estate purchase. And then I just talk about, and then I just kind of get into the process. I mean, I don't say a ton. I obviously will say, our goal is to provide realistic expectations throughout this. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And then I just kind of get into it. So,
I mean, I think that's good. I like to start out by saying, okay, do you have any questions before we get started? And then they're either going to be like, no, because they have no fucking clue and they haven't thought about it at all. Or they're somewhat prepared and they're going to have questions. And I'm going to say, you know what, we're actually going to talk about that as we go through this. So just hang tight and remember it when we get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to your point, what I always try to drive home, because nobody really gives a shit about this page, but what I do try to explain is you're about to make a huge decision, and we don't take it lightly, and we don't want you to take it lightly. We're not just opening doors and looking at houses. It's about giving you all of this information and helping you understand it so you feel really confident and really comfortable making this immensely huge decision. I've got your back. Let's go do this. It's a serious thing. Make sure they understand it's a serious thing, because then they take you more serious and they understand the value you're providing. If you're kind of flippant about it, they're going to be flippant about it. Don't be flippant about it. All right. Who wants to talk about buyer agency? Janine, you blinked. I knew you wanted to talk about it. Go.
Oh, sure. Doug, is this the updated one? I feel like it's in a different order than what I'm used to.
It's been a couple of months since I've updated it. This should be the one that's in .lead.
Okay.
This is the binder, not the folder.
Okay. Mine just must be in a different order then. I can't remember if this is immediately what I talk to next, but if that's what it is, I'll definitely talk to it. So buyer agency, at first, I don't know, I always do the WWREA first before I do this.
Well, you need to do it in the order that I made the binder, damn it.
Are you being facetious?
Kinda, but kinda not. There was a lot of thought that went into putting the binder together.
Okay. Well, to that point,
it's just let's revisit the order it's in, because there really was a lot of thought put into how it's put together.
I'll do buyer agency if it bothers her.
No, it doesn't bother me. I'm just haven't done that before. I've done WWREA, and I just didn't know if that was a big deal, and apparently it is.
Go ahead. It's not. It's really not. We're just talking. You're not. Again, it's not a hand slap.
Okay. So, I will bring this up and I'll explain saying, buyer agency is, a legal contract that, we would enter into. And this is something that is required by law before I can present any offer on any property for you. And in a nutshell, it's saying that, you are choosing me to represent you through the purchase of your home, and in return, you are choosing not to work with any other real estate agent. And you can, make sure and be comfortable knowing that this contract is going to make, I say that, you're going to make sure, and I don't read word for word those things, but, your best interests are going to be protected first and foremost. Intimate things about your, financial situation and things like that are not going to be shared if it's not necessary to the transaction. You're essentially hiring me to work for you. And then I always explain a little bit about how they're not, quote, paying me and the seller pays the commission. And then I will go into except for a FSBO deal, because that is on the agency agreement. And explain that in the only situation where you would be responsible for paying commission is if you were interested in a property that was a for sale by owner and the seller wasn't willing to compensate the firm. Then of course we would come and ask you for the difference.
Especially sensitive to that because you've dealt with that probably more times per capita than everybody else on the team has. So I get that. That's a little ahead of the horse. Okay, that part. Because at this point, we're just explaining exactly what we do through buyer agency. We're not necessarily explaining the contract. We're explaining what we do as a buyer agent. And it's talking about, I'm giving you my loyalty. I'm pledging to work on your behalf. I'm giving you I'm going to follow your lawful instructions. I'm going to disclose everything I can about the property so you are comfortable and confident and feel informed. We're going to be accountable for all of our dealings. We use dot-loop. Everything is digitally signed. There will be copies forever. Reasonable skill and care. I have my license in North Carolina, and I do my continuing education every year. Okay, that sets me up to be your buyer agent. The next piece is, Felicia, explain to us the working with real estate agents brochure.
Okay, so I tell them, by law, I have to explain this to you and I need you to sign it. It's not a contract. It says it on the last page. This is not a contract. I make sure I point that out to them. But in North Carolina, there's different types of real estate agents. There's a seller's agent who represents the seller, negotiates on behalf of the seller, has their best interest at heart. In North Carolina, everyone is representing the seller until you sign agency with a representative to represent you as a buyer's agent. There is a buyer's agent. Once you sign agency, that agent represents you as your agent. They will negotiate on your behalf, have your best interest at heart. And then there's a dual agent. There's different types of dual agents, but basically if you like a house that my firm has listed and I'm your buyer's agent, that's considered dual agency because the transaction's within the same firm. There's a designated dual agency. We don't do that in our firm. I'll never represent the seller and the buyer, but basically that's the gist of agency in North Carolina. Will you please sign here? Again, this is not a contract. I will give you the front copy. I just need the back copy, and that's that.
That's really good. Be very careful because what we actually do designated because that's where one agent from the same firm represents each party. We just don't use
we do that?
Yeah, that's what it's called when one agent represents each party in the same firm, but they're different agents. We just check that box because Tiffany, we talked about this 3 years ago. It's best practices not to call it dual agency just because information can be shared and you don't mean to share information. So we don't
call it designated dual agent.
Designated dual, yeah. That's
where we got confused is you can't be a designated dual agent against
you
if you're a provisional broker.
Right, but we don't call it designated anyways.
Right.
And that's why everything that we sign is that first option that says that they allow dual agency, even though we don't practice dual agency. Because one agent will never represent both parties in the same transaction.
And that's what I make sure I see. Yeah.
But technically it is dual agency if you're showing our firm's listing, even if
that is dual agency.
Yeah.
I just do individual dual agency.
Correct. That's right, Juliana.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
So, designated dual, yeah.
So this is pretty much how I say it. All right, seller's agent, you see the sign in the yard? they represent the seller. You call that sign, you're talking to the agent that represents the seller. That's why you don't call the sign, you call me, because I'm your buyer's agent. I represent you as the buyer. I negotiate on your behalf. In North Carolina, you're allowed to be a dual agent. So you could call that sign and that listing agent could help you that also represents the seller. But we don't do that at my company. And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to have one agent represent both sides of the transaction? Because you can't really negotiate for somebody, then all you're really doing is mediating.
That's what I was going to say. I make a point to say, hey, you know, if it's perfectly legal in the state of North Carolina, but my role changes and I basically become a glorified paper passer, and it's kind of a conflict of interest. And what am I getting paid for?
That's right.
I consider it a conflict of interest. It doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do it. We just don't do it.
I always tell people.
I say it's a conflict of interest.
One of my teammates would help you because I already represent the state.
That's right.
That's it.
I just tell people that I don't do it because it's a conflict of interest. And how am I supposed to get you the best deal as well as the seller the best deal at the same time?
Yep.
Right.
That's exactly what I say. Exactly what I say.
And if people can't pick up when you're putting that down, that's a good test close.
Bye. Yeah.
Right? This whole thing is.
I think sometimes.
The test closes. Go ahead.
The last time I did an agent, a brochure, sometimes I always can see between the two people, like they're very still hesitant to sign the brochure. And I'm like, then I'll say, hey, this is, you know, there's no reason not to feel comfortable signing this. This is not a contract. Anytime you speak with any real estate agent in the state of North Carolina, you should be presented with one of these. And so you may sign 6 of these before you sign a contract with a real estate agent. So anytime you're having a conversation with any agent about selling or buying your home, you should see this document. And then sometimes that.
How many agents have you talked with? 4. How many have shown you this? 1.
Yeah, right.
Put that out there. It's a great.
That's the first question I ask when I provide that thing. Have you seen this before?
This?
You've probably seen this.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Me too, Brandon.
If they say no, I haven't. Okay, well, have you talked to any other agents? Because if you've had a serious conversation with them, especially about purchase price or finances, we're required to show you this by the state commission. Here's what it says.
Yep. Price, terms, and motivation, baby.
Love it. All right. Who wants to do? Okay. Here's the buyer agency. Just one second, Meredith. Okay. Here's the buyer agency. None of these should take more than like a minute to explain. So I want somebody to think about who's going to explain this quickly while we're answering Meredith's question. Meredith, go ahead. You got it.
So would you suggest going through that first part first, and then when you get to the working with agents brochure, then pull out the brochure, or would you do the brochure first and then go into the binder?
Both. You've seen I do it first.
Both.
Like I'll give them the folder. I'll give them the thing, and before I open the binder, I just go straight to the brochure.
Yep.
If you're doing a consult, I'd rather do that. And here's why. The binder has this paper form in it, you know, the 4-page thing, which is confusing. The brochure is so much neater and cleaner and less intimidating.
Yeah, I would say it's easier to, when you show them a brochure, to be like, this is not a contract, than when you show them a 4-page document.
That looks like a contract, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think necessarily that piece is important, what you do first, but I like to just jump right into it. Hey, before we get started, I need to explain this to you, and I need you to sign it to say, hey, I explained it to you so I don't lose my license. We're required to do it in North Carolina. And what does that do? It gets that out of the way, but it also says, hey, this is some serious stuff we're talking about. You know, we're not just here to look at houses. We're here to establish a relationship to work together to help you make this immensely important decision. If you're not taking it seriously, they're not going to take it seriously, and you're going to waste your time, guaranteed. So show the value that, hey, this is a big deal. We're going to have fun with it, but we got to get down to business. Nate, buyer agency.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this is the exclusive buyer agency agreement. This is the document that will make you, my client, and me, your agent. I am going to read this thing line by line because it's got a lot of lawyer words in there. So I want to make sure that you understand it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to zoom through this real quick, but if there's something you have questions on, please let me know. But I am going to highlight some important things on here. At the end, you're going to get a copy of it, and it's going to have signature and initial boxes when I send it to you on dotloop so that we can make this thing official. So if you want to move down to the part 3 where it says duration of agency, pretty much everything on this document is there for a reason, for something that's happened in the past. So we typically like to do a 6-month time period, but just so you know, we plan to find you a house a lot quicker than that. And once your house closes, our agency ends, but our friendship will be forever.
I like that.
I don't really say that. I just thought of that.
I would work it in there.
So you remember that part where I told you that I work for you for free? That's mostly true. Okay. So there are a couple occasions where we ask that you come out of pocket if you deal with somebody that's potentially like a discount broker and they're not offering above 2.4% is what we ask for. Then we'd ask that you make up the difference. But here's the good news for you. I've never had that happen, because typically what I do is I talk to the listing agent and say, hey, do you really want my clients to have to come out of pocket to make this deal happen? And usually they balk and they pay the commission. So the other case would be for sale by owner. If for some reason, which I've never had this happen either, if for some reason the for sale by owner refuses to pay a buyer's commission, we ask that you pay that out of pocket as well. But again, never had that happen. All right, moving on. If you go to part C of number 4, it talks about 90 days. I want to highlight that this 90-day period is past agency. And the reason why this exists is because some people try to take advantage of real estate agents. So to kind of protect us from people that would have us just open the door, show them a place, and then 6 months later, go knock on the door and try to make an offer, we put this 90-day clause in there where we would still be entitled to a commission. I'm not saying that's you, but I'm just telling you it's happened before, and that's why it's there.
I think that's all good info, Nate. I don't think you need to be that detailed. I think it might overwhelm people. That's really up to you. This is what I do. Remember we talked about buyer agency? This is the actual agency agreement. So after we go out and look at homes, I'm going to send you this to sign it so we can formalize our relationship, say, hey, we want to work together. What this says is you don't pay me for my services. The seller pays me in North Carolina. So basically I work complimentary for you. There's a copy of it in your folder. Make sure you take the time to read through it and let me know if you have any questions before we sign it. That's why I give you copies of all of these.
Doug, you don't mention like for sale by owner commission or anything?
I don't.
You used to.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to, when you send it to them to sign it, I wouldn't in the buyer consult. You can revisit it when you send it to them to sign. I think in the consult, you don't really need to go that far into it because they're not signing it now.
Isn't the goal to have them sign it at the end?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, Nate.
If that's what you want to do, then I would revisit it or just do it like you're doing. I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. It depends on your intent of the conversation.
Okay.
Now, I never say the 2.4 to 3%. I don't get that detailed, but I always say, the only time that you're going to pay me is if for some reason, you want to see it for sale by owner and they're not offering a commission to the buyer's agent, then at that point, if you want me to still represent you on that purchase, then, you'll have to pay my commission. So if you are, looking at for sale by owners on Zillow or wherever, just keep this in mind.
I would do that.
And then I always tell them, but everything that I send you, all the houses I send you are, already listed with a real estate agent. So that my commission is included in that listing.
That's good. I like that.
Going on though, what I would say is I skip pretty much past that and I move all the way down to the dual agency part. And I just say, hey, remember when we talked about dual agency, those are the boxes that you'll initial saying that you'll let the firm act as a dual agent if we have to. And then the only other thing I bring up on here is the surveillance part. And I just tell my clients like, hey, if we're going to look at houses and we're in the houses, just be aware that, you know, it's 2020 and people have video cameras and they have recording capabilities. So the last thing you want to do is go in there and say, oh, I love this house so much, I'll pay anything for it. Keep everything outside, have a poker face while you're in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same thing for the Ring doorbells.
Watch doorbell cameras.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing I say too, and it may not be a big deal, I said, and onto that surveillance thing, like you were saying, Nate, like it's only in here because it's happened before. Like I said, when we're seeing houses, you can open up cabinets and things like that, take a look, but you just can't go taking their medicine bottles out, their stuff, you know, that you just got to respect the seller stuff, because to that point you are on camera sometimes.
I think those are good points to make. I think that you can scare people by being too detailed. So be careful with what you say. I can tell you that I've never talked about medicine cabinets or cameras in 6 years.
Do you tell them that when you're showing the house?
Seriously.
If you're going to tell them that, I would tell them as you're walking in the house, not during the consult. I think it's too much information for a consult.
Okay.
A lot of times when I'm showing a house, people will say, "Can I look in this closet or whatever?" And I think that's a good opportunity to say, "Yeah, this is the whole point of what we're doing. Open every door. Just be respectful of people's belongings. Obviously, don't go through their stuff, but yeah, we're here to check out closet space and stuff like that." I would do that. I try to keep my buyer consults no more than 35 minutes. I mean, I want to seem engaged, and I don't want to hit them with, especially a first-time buyer, they already think it's daunting enough. I don't want them to think, holy shit, this is going to be super hard and I got to follow all these rules. I just try to get in and out.
Yeah, plus you'll lose them.
Yeah, and that's why I talk about with the points that you and Tiffany and Janine just kind of made. They're really good points at a time and place. Just be careful when you drop some of that stuff, because you can scare people off. I mean, the consult is to get them engaged and help them understand where we're going. We don't want to scare them off during the consult. So just, you know, look at it from your perspective, but also their perspective. Brandon, this used to be 10 steps. We got it to 8. And part of it was because you complained about it. So why don't you do this page?
Well, considering I'm unlocking a front door in Nashville, I don't know what page you're talking about. If you'll tell me, I'll try to run through it. What? I don't have any. What is it I'm doing?
The home buying process. It's okay. I'll do it. The home buying process.
I don't.
It's okay. Let me do it because I've got it in front of me. The home buying process. I'll say, okay, here's the deal. If you pay attention to any of the stuff we're talking about right now, pay attention to this page. This is the most important page of all of this. And I really want you to understand the process, and this is it. Okay, this is where we are. Step 1, buyer consult. We're getting together. We're having a chance to meet and get to know each other a little bit, make sure that we feel good about working together. I can already tell it's going to be great for both of us. The next step is, how are you going to pay for your house? We talked about this already, and this is really step 1A. Heck, this step could even be considered first. But like we already talked about, I already connected you with my lender. We can't make an offer on a home before we have that pre-approval letter from a lender. So you need to talk to my lender, make sure you already get that figured out so we know what your budget is, how much money you're going to have to bring to the table, so we can really focus in on your search. Makes sense? Great. Now we move on to winning your home. What's next? We know how you're going to pay for it. We know how much you're approved for. We're going to get out there and find it. We're going to build the search at the end of our conversation here today and start to identify options that make sense for you. You're going to pick your top 2 or 3. We're going to go see them. Once you pick out the one that you want and you say, hey, this is it, we're on the step 4. I'm going to write the offer. Because I'm your agent and you sign the buyer agency agreement so I can represent you, I can work on your behalf. We're going to write the offer. It's going to be based on the comps that we've looked at to make sure we're paying a fair price, but also understand how it's priced per the market. And we're going to go for it and submit our offer. Once we get it negotiated out and worked out, we're going to go under contract. Congratulations. We've agreed to terms. Now some money is due, and that's the due diligence and earnest money. So 2 amounts of money are due once we go under contract to actually secure the contract. Have you heard of due diligence or earnest money before? Huh? No. All right. So Due diligence is money that you paid to the seller, and you're basically buying the time to have inspections done, have the appraisal done, to make sure you understand what's going on with the house. Typically, that's 2 to 3 weeks, so 14 to 21 days worth of time. It's going to take 30 to 45 days to close, right? The first 14 to 21 days of that is this due diligence. It's going to run between $500 or $1,000 if we're not multiple offers, okay? Because you're paying that now, you get a credit back for it at closing. However, if you decide to terminate and walk away, the seller gets to keep that money, again, because you're buying the time to do this. They're taking it off the market. They can't sell it to anybody else. The second piece is the earnest money. That's from the end of the due diligence period until closing. That's paid to the attorney, and that's typically 1% of the purchase price. If you terminate the contract during due diligence, you get the earnest money back. However, if we get through the due diligence period and then you walk away, well, you also default the earnest money to the seller, again, because you're compensating them for their time that they couldn't sell it to anyone else. Just like the due diligence money, you get a credit for the earnest money at closing because you've already paid it. So, for example, $200,000 house, you're looking at $1,000 for due diligence. You're looking at $2,000 for earnest money. So you can already plan for about $3,000 out of pocket when we go under contract. Are you prepared to do that? Yes. Fantastic. Moving on. All right. The due diligence period, like I said, that's where we have inspections done. It's where we have the appraisal done. We're going to talk a little bit about the disclosures that the seller is going to share with us, and they're going to tell us what they know that's going on with their house, right? But they may not be right because not every seller has a home inspection done before they sell their home. We use that as a guide, but we also take it with a grain of salt. That's why we have a home inspection. We're going to get the home inspection back. Hopefully there are minimal items on there that we have to have the seller address. As we talked about, sellers don't have to disclose anything or repair anything. Every sale in North Carolina is as is. However, most sellers will negotiate in good faith because they weren't aware or they want to make the deal happen. After we agree to repairs or concessions in lieu of repairs, we're through the due diligence period. We're really moving on to the last steps. And that's what I like to call the hurry up and wait phase. Basically, we're waiting for the attorney to do their work. We're waiting for the lender to do their work. They're going to ask you for all the documents you've already submitted probably over again because they're giving you a lot of money to buy the house. So they want to make sure that your credit situation is still in a good place. Once all that's done, we're going to move to closing. The day of closing or the day before, we're going to go do one final walkthrough. We're going to make sure if we requested any repairs that they were done correctly and we have the paperwork. We're going to eyeball everything, make sure it looks good. Then we're going to go to the attorney's office. You're going to sign the documents. 2 or 3 hours later, the deed will be filed, and then it's officially yours. You can start moving in. You did it. Comments, thoughts, additions, subtractions?
So that's really good. I don't know that I necessarily talk numbers of due diligence and earnest money unless a lot of the times I'll say it's the collateral that you're paying. You know, this check goes to the seller, this check goes to the attorney. And a lot of times they'll stop me and say, okay, well, what is that amount? I said, well, that's whatever you want it to be, and it depends on different situations and people's financial situation and if we're in multiple offers or not. But generally, this is what I advise. And so I don't know that I necessarily bring up the actual numbers of due diligence and earnest money in the consult unless they ask me.
Any other thoughts on that?
Because it could be $250 for somebody, it could be $2,000 for somebody else.
Yeah, I don't say numbers either unless I always tell them once we get to the specific property, it's going to change depending on the situation. Yeah. So I'll help advise you when we get to that point.
Right.
And then if they say, well, what can I expect? You know their price point they're looking in, so you can kind of estimate. And I go usually in the middle. I usually don't say like multiple offers highest, and I don't say we're going to try to squeeze by this with the lowest that we can. Usually I buy somewhere in the middle. You know, at a $200,000 house, I'd probably say you're looking at maybe $500 for due diligence and $1,000 for earnest money. But again, that's all negotiable. Is that something that you have available right now that if we did go under contract that you would be able to pay? And then
I always make sure you ask them, are you able to write those checks up front?
Yeah. Yep. So
I mean, our market to ask them if they're able to write checks if you don't give them an amount. So that's my point. How can you ask them if they can write the check if they don't know what the amount is?
Well, because I'll say this is the money that's due at the time of contract.
I think it's important that you give them a range. And
Okay.
the earnest money should be 1%, especially Triangle folks. I know that you guys can get away with less at the coast. Triangle folks, 1% for the earnest money.
Yep.
I tell
$1,000
people
for the
here
due
0.5% to 1% is what I tell everyone.
I think that you should set the expectation for more. That way, if it's less, it's a surprise, but it's not, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's not a surprise if somebody wants 1%.
Yep. To that point, when I was a fairly new agent, I had to terminate not only a contract, but agency with somebody because, when I went over the due diligence and earnest money, apparently I wasn't clear enough because I didn't give numbers. So when it came time for that, it caused a problem. So I think it's good to say numbers.
A ballpark is definitely a good idea.
I'm going to strongly recommend that you give numbers. These are baseline things. You need to set, the whole purpose of this is to set expectations. In my opinion, you can't set an expectation if you don't give some number.
It's another good way just to see if there's.
Second, Charles. If you're not given a number, what value are you providing? You're not in control. Make sure you're in control. That's the whole point of this, is to be in control. I'm not saying it's wrong not to give a number. I'm saying you're selling yourself short and you're setting yourself up to have to answer a question further down the process that you shouldn't be answering then. You should be answering it now. Go ahead, Charles.
It's a good way also to see if these people are serious, right? I mean, you don't want to get out there and start looking at houses with people when, they're in the mindset of, oh, well, I'm just going to put $200 for my due diligence and it's fine. It's like, no, look, up here, I understand it's different, but up here, I have the conversation of, in this market, $1,000 is what you're going to be expecting to put down for due diligence and 1% in earnest, depending on whether or not we're in multiples. And for some folks, they're like, well, I don't have that money. Then the conversation goes, well, that's what you're going to need realistically to be making offers.
Right.
How long will it be until you have that money saved up? And if you don't have money for due diligence and earnest, you probably don't have money for closing costs either.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have money for those things, your budget is probably already low and you're probably looking at multiple offers anyway. So everybody is wasting their time.
Yep.
But you don't know that if you don't get to that point. Right. Yeah. So it's really important to get to that point. One of the consults I had this week was with the first time home buyer, and I already had her pre-qual letter, and it was for state employees, and it's 100% financing. So you think I asked her if she had money for due diligence and earnest money? You're damn right I did. Because if somebody's financing 100% of their house, I need to know that they've got cash on hand to handle the other stuff, right? So just be careful. This is a good way to make sure that you're not wasting your time, but also providing value at the same time.
Yeah. And just like what you were saying, Doug, with the 100% financing, is if there's any closing costs and they need closing cost assistance, right? So they need the seller to contribute some, and they're at that lower price point already. They're going to be in multiples. They're not going to get any closing costs. And that may be something their lender told them, oh yeah, you're going to get $3,000 or $4,000 in closing costs.
Hell, that's my biggest complaint with Adam Slack is he tells everybody to ask for closing costs. Adam, their budget's $200,000. They're not getting any closing costs. You're killing me. Stop.
Yeah,
but he's not going to tell him that. It's up to you, right? It's up to you.
Yeah, the pre-approval always comes on. It always comes on the pre-approval.
Right. That's why I'm saying, who wants to be in control? I do.
Yeah. Here at the coast, just for everybody at the office here, what I normally tell people, and everybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a good baseline to tell every client is $500 for due diligence and anywhere between 0.5% to 1% in earnest money. I know that's a big range, but I think it depends on the price point of what the person's looking at. I
think that's fair. My point is at least give a baseline. Talk about something.
I think that's what we should be saying to all of our clients.
Because we don't want to do no due diligence or $200, do we, Dustin?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, and I always tell people too, I'll say this is the standard, but then tell them if we're in a multiple offer situation, you have to understand these numbers are going to change.
Right.
and just make sure you lay that out there. Because if you get into a multiple offer and then they're like, well, you told me it was only 500. Well, that shit's changing now. Like there's 5 offers on this house. So,
right.
You know.
So they're already head spinning.
Yeah.
And now you're ramping the numbers up. So what happens if you haven't mentioned that before?
Right.
Now they're like, well, why didn't you tell me this before? Now where's your relationship going?
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole point of the consult. Set the expectations, broach scenarios, make sure that you're ready for stuff. All right, we're coming up on an hour. We're almost through the meat and potatoes of this. The things to consider, I'll hit this really quickly. All right, I'll say we've already talked about agency. Remember, I'm representing you as a buyer. The seller has their own representation. That's why you need me to represent you. Okay, you've got somebody working on your behalf. There's some great benefits of buying. I'm not going to go through these line by line, but just first and foremost, you can deduct your mortgage interest. It's a great thing. You also build equity, appreciation, etc. This is what I don't want you to forget. Things to avoid. From now until we close, don't make major purchases. Don't move money around between bank accounts unless it's about money for this transaction or buying your house. Don't change jobs unless you talk to the lender first. Don't miss or make any late payments, because it can mean the difference between closing now and having to start the process over in 6 months. Do you want to wait 6 months or a year to buy a house? Don't open new credit lines. I know you want to buy new furniture for your house. Go open the credit line after we close, because it can throw off your debt to income ratio and we'll have to start the whole process over. Got it? We're on the same page about that? Please don't go buy a new car.
This is so important to say. I did this consult with a young first-time buyer. She called me at 8 o'clock at night, and I thought, oh, she doesn't normally call me at 8. I answered the phone, and she was like, I'm at the car dealership. I'm about to buy a car. Is this a bad idea? I remember you saying something about this, and I said, do not do it. I'm like, you don't need it tonight.
Out of there.
I'm like, you don't need it tonight. I'm like, go home, call the lender tomorrow. If the lender says you're good, by all means, go back and buy the car tomorrow. If the lender says you're not good, don't. And she called me the next day and she was like, you just saved my house. She was like, thank you so much for answering my phone call.
What happens if she didn't say that? They buy the car, everybody wasted a month's worth of time, and now they're still renting.
Yeah, she would have lost her house.
Right?
That's
it's
very
up
safe.
to you guys. It's up to you guys to say this. That's why the consult's important. Nobody else is going to tell them that. Or I'm not going to tell anybody else to tell them that.
Yeah, I had a guy, same deal, Tiff. He's under contract now, and he texted me, and he's like, can I do blah, blah, blah? I said, I'm going to tell you no, that's not a good idea, but you need to make sure that you talk to Adam and confirm that this is good or not good. And Adam sent him an email, said no, he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was some sort of credit card or something.
Go back home.
Don't forget. All right, really quickly, because we're basically out of time. This is also important. There are expenses associated with buying a house above and beyond the price of the house, right? This is what some of them are. Due diligence and earnest money, we've already talked about that. Once we go under contract, the lender's going to talk to you, and you're going to have to order an appraisal because they want to make sure the house is worth what you're paying for it, so they can justify loaning you that amount of money. Appraisal is going to cost between $400 and $500. You're going to pay that directly to the lender. You need to make sure you have that money too. Also, we're going to have home inspections in the triangle. There are 3 down there. There's 1 or 2. We'll say home, pest, and in the triangle radon. Okay. They're going to run you between $600 and $700 up here, maybe between $500 and $600 down there. All right. Again, we've talked about why the home inspection is important. You'll pay for that at time of service. Now, do they always have to pay for it at time of service? No. Do you need to set the expectation that they need to pay for it at time of service? Yes. Don't even act like it's an option to pay for it at closing. Okay. Also, if you decide you want to have a survey because you want to put up a fence later, you can do it now or you can do it later on. Completely up to you. We also want to make sure there's no encroachments or easements on the property that we're not aware of. They're going to probably start at $400 and go up from there depending on how big the lot is. Okay, so you'll need money for all of that. In addition, there's what's called closing costs. Okay, the lender will estimate your closing costs, and it's all going to be about the specific property. So when we pick out the property that you want to make an offer on, I'm going to send that address to the lender so they can really estimate your closing costs and give you a really hard figure. And it can close day to day, or it can change day to day based on the closing date, but they'll be able to give you a solid date. What are those closing costs made up of? Okay, you're going to pay origination fees to the lender. You're going to have to set up your escrow account. So every month you've got your mortgage payment, right? And it's made of 4 things: your principal and interest, but also your taxes and insurance. Every month you pay 1/12 of your tax and insurance bill for the entire year. The lender holds that money, and then they pay the bill when it's due every year. You don't have to pay that. So they're collecting that every month. You're also going to have to set up your escrow account and set a couple of months of that aside for them to build on. You're also going to pay for that for the remainder of the year. Your share of the taxes for the year and your insurance bill for the next year. You're going to pay all of that at closing. You're also going to pay the attorney fees, the title search, any flood cert fees, and for the deed to record. Again, your lender will estimate all that for you. We usually ballpark it around 3%, but it all depends on your house in particular and your loan product. Any questions about that? After closing and right at closing, you'll get some reminders from closing manager April, and I'll remind you about her later. You want to make sure you got your utilities in your name for the day of closing so you don't move in and the power's off. If there are any bonds or warranties, you want to make sure they're transferred. You might think about changing your locks out or having your house rekeyed, updating your keypads. Also make sure you change your address with the post office so you get your mail. Any questions about that? Cool. Here's the out-of-pocket costs again, if you want to revisit this. It's kind of line by line. It really breaks it down and extrapolates it. We did that because if you remember, we talked about several months ago actually putting hard numbers in front of folks, right? Just so they have a good idea what that looks like. Professional services. This document looks really daunting, but it's really not. In short, they are typical services associated with a real estate purchase. They're on the left-hand side. When we go under contract, I'm going to know what you're going to want, what you're not going to do. So I'm going to send you this form to say, yes, I'm going to use your people, or no, I'm not going to use your people, or we're not going to use this service. And all you'll do is initial every line. This is the brochure about questions and answers on home inspections. It's in your folder, just so you understand exactly what a home inspection is. In short, it's like an owner's manual for your house. It lets you know what's going on with the house, what needs attention, and just what you need to pay attention to even after you purchase. Here's the offer to purchase. This is the big one, all right? We're saying, hey, I want this house. This is the one for me and my family, right? The most important stuff is here on page 1. So that's really all I'm going to hit. Okay. But there's a copy of it in your folder. Got the seller on the top line, and then you as the buyer on the second line. We've got the address, and then we've got the legal description, how it's represented in the tax records. The first line is how much you're offering for the house. Remember the due diligence we talked about? That's the second line. Remember the earnest money that we talked about? That's the third line. All the way down at the bottom, we've got the balance. And that's the top line minus the second and third lines, just signifying that you're getting a credit for both of those at closing because you've already paid that money. Any questions about that? Going a little bit further in the offer to purchase, you'll see the escrow agent. That's basically selecting the person who's going to hold your earnest money, typically the closing attorney. We've got great attorneys. You don't have to worry about picking out the attorney or the inspector or any of that. We're going to handle all that for you. That goes back to that professional services disclosure we talked about just a minute ago. The due diligence period, remember we talked about that 14 to 21 days. This is where we select the exact day. Closing date, we get to select the closing date, at least as part of the offer. Typically it's going to be 30 to 45 days based on your lender and the type of loan that you're using. We get to set that. Again, it's negotiable. Other things to worry about in the contract is things that convey with the property. You don't have to worry about things like the oven or the built-in microwave or the stove or the dishwasher. Those things are called fixtures. They convey with the property automatically. However, there are typically really 3 things that people want with a property that aren't considered fixtures. So if we want the refrigerator, washer, and dryer, we're going to write those into the contract because they're considered personal property. And that's what we do right here on page 5, number 3. Other things in this document that we might use or might not use is if we ask the seller to pay for a home warranty. if we ask the seller to pay any closing costs, and if there are any other documents such as early possession or seller possession after closing or something like that. We can touch on those when we get to the specific property and move forward with an offer. Any questions about that? Again, you don't want to go page by page and use Nate's line about, you know, this was prepared by lawyers. Of course, there's a bunch of crap in here. This is what you need to know. Every real estate transaction in North Carolina uses this document, so you don't have to worry about getting caught up on anything. We're all working from the same playbook. We're just going to fill out the stuff specific to the property you want to buy. Any questions on that? Thoughts? Anybody?
You go through more of that than I do.
Do you?
Like, when I talk about the offer to purchase, I go, look, this is what you need to know. This is the form that we submit the offer. You're going to tell me what we're going to talk about the strategy. I'm going to put it in this format. I'm going to send it to you, and then I'm going to explain it. That's it.
Hell, that's great too. Again, there's not one way to do this. There are multiple ways to do it. The reason we do this as a group is to give you ideas for what works best for you and your clients. The seller's disclosure, the seller is going to provide this. There are 3 answers: yes, no, or no representation. In most cases, they're going to tell us all they can about their property because they want to feel good about us making an offer on it. But it doesn't mean they know. Not every seller has a home inspection done. Remember, we talked about having inspections done? That's why we do it, to see if this is actually accurate. It might not be accurate, but it's not because they are not trying to be accurate. It's just because not everybody knows. So it's, again, we take it kind of with a grain of salt. There's this box, no representation. Sellers don't have to tell us anything about their property. Usually when you see that, it's because the seller hadn't occupied the property that they're selling, or it's a foreclosure. That's all. I'll bring this when we see the house, every house, so we know what's going on. Lead-based paint, if it was built before 1978, blah, blah, blah. This is the regional one. So if you guys want to talk about purchasing coastal real estate, you know, flood zones, all of that stuff, this is in here for you guys. Also the coastal hazard addendum that hopefully sellers down there are providing if they're in flood zones. If not, I would make sure that you're just getting it filled out on your own, just to cover your bases. And then, hey, once we go under contract, you're going to get this letter from April. She's our closing manager. She handles all the in-house back-end stuff. She's going to coordinate the closing with the attorney. She's going to make sure that the listing agent is staying up to date and in contact with us. She's going to schedule all the inspections and everything for us. What questions do you have? All right, let's build your search. And then I pull up the search on the screen and we build the search right in front of them. That's a really condensed version because we had some conversation and it wasn't just free throw or, you know, whatever. Thoughts on that? Nobody?
I mean, that was good. I think that was helpful.
I always end by saying everything that we've reviewed together is in this folder for you to have a hard copy of, and moving forward, any of these documents that we need to sign and prepare along the way making offers can be done electronically.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Hey, you're not going to have to sign any of this stuff in person, really. I'm going to send everything to you through .loop. That's also a good chance to set the expectation. If there's more than one person, hey, I need an email address for each person.
And then he didn't give me his email.
I like to set the expectation 200 DD, 200 EMD, buyer possession.
I'm going to mute you, Nate, or Dustin. I'm sorry. Stop. Sorry, Nate. I was looking at you.
My phone is dying. Can I go?
No, your phone's dying. It's 10:30.
I'm on my way to showing, so I'm using my hotspot and on Zoom. Okay, well, if I randomly leave, my phone died, okay? Because I'm using my GPS too.
It's fine.
iPhone.
Love you, mean it.
Love you. I hope this was good as a refresher for all of you really seasoned agents and ones who have been doing it for a while about why, for lack of a better term, I don't want you to be lazy and not do this, because you're missing the opportunity to set expectations. And when we don't set expectations, bad things happen quite often, right? I like seeing the head nod. Thanks, Nate. So don't forget to do it. Newer agents, hopefully you see the value in why we want to start the relationship off with people doing this. Setting expectations is what we do. And if we're not setting them, either somebody else is, or they're coming with their own preconceived notions, which 99 out of 100% or 99 out of 100 times are wrong.
I think if you're a new agent, you should practice this with somebody on the team, a spouse, someone before you do it. I remember going through this like multiple times before I actually.
Yeah, I use my husband.
Yeah.
Yes, please practice. Make your husband sit through it. Make your dog sit through it. Make your kids sit through it. Sit in front of a mirror and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Practice it.
Yeah.
Hell, sit in front of your laptop and record yourself doing it, and then go back and watch it and critique yourself. Go in the office and role play with each other and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Take turns doing a page and just go through it. Practice it. It doesn't have to be this really big, serious thing. You can have fun with it, but use it for what it is. And it's a tool to set the expectations and the tone for how this thing is going to play out with your folks, right? So it's about two things for me. For our client, it's about setting expectations. For you guys, it's about not wasting your time. I don't want you to waste your time. That's time you can spend with your family. But if you don't set the expectations, you're going to end up wasting that time with somebody who's not serious or something that falls apart later. Not to be doom and gloom, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from, right? I hope it was helpful.
Mm-hmm. It was. Thank you.
You're so sweet, Tiffany. Thank you. Anybody have anything else? Lisa, you've been suspiciously quiet. Ashley, you've also been suspiciously quiet. Meredith, you've been quiet too.
I'm taking it all in.
Just trying to absorb it all.
Hopefully it was helpful for you guys. I really would practice it. Find a buddy in the office and practice it. Meredith and
Ashley, you can come with me next week if you want.
Zoom with each other, practice with each other. You're both new, you know, practice with each other. Can't hurt, can only help. The best thing that the team offers is feedback, right? Use it to your advantage to get better. That's the whole purpose of our setup, is to, you know, we go from 0 to 60 a lot faster than agents who work with 100 other people in their office but never have any interaction or learn from each other. So take advantage of it. It'll help you sell more houses and give you more freedom. All right, that's enough talking. God, I've been talking all day. I think I've met my quota for the week. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your participation and for your help with this. I hope you learned some stuff. Remember, tomorrow is our DAR call with our new schedule. Make sure that your stuff is updated, okay?
Hey, I have a question.
I thought you were gone.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
You almost made my phone die.
Oh, go ahead.
All that talking. I have my listing in the MLS. I have it as electric stove, but on the MLS sheet, it's showing gas. And I went in, like, unclicked everything, re-clicked it, re-saved it. It's still pulling up as gas. I don't know. Has anyone else run into that? I don't know what else to do.
Is there?
You didn't click gas and electric, right?
No. It's just that, like, whenever I click on the input sheet, it just says electric. But then when I save it and open up the regular MLS sheet, it says gas.
Without looking at it, have you selected the fuel source for the house as gas? Is that why? Is it defaulting to that because of that?
No. We don't. Right. I don't think we have that option.
Text me the address and I'll go in MLS and look at it. And if we can't figure it out together, you can call Cape Fear.
Okay.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. I'll talk to some of you
soon.
We're already 15 minutes late. I'll call you in a minute.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.